broadcast. Hello there everybody, my name is Richard Wisher. I'm on the way to the Norris Museum with my networking buddy Chris Thomas. So we're going to take you along St Ives High Street and take you to the Norris Museum. So I see a few people are already signing on. We've got 5 on now, we're getting a few hearts. People are liking what we're saying. This is my friend Chris Thomas. So get the light right. And we're on to the way to the Norris Museum. So this is St Ives in Cambridgeshire. I'll do it all on the forward-facing camera because there's traffic about, there's lots of busyness about today in St Ives, lots of nice sunshine as well.
A gorgeous market town.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the town that was actually very pro-Cromwell.
Well, wait until we get past the watering. They're watering the flowers, keeping them alive.
We'll pass the ice cream.
So there you go, Chris. What's that? So Chris is now broadcasting for me.
All right, so we're walking through the town of St Ives, a town that is actually quite pro-Cromwell. In fact, it's the only town that has a statue of Cromwell in the marketplace. We're just a bit too far beyond that to show you, but perhaps Richard can do that at some other time. But as we said, we're wandering down to the Norris Museum. It's the Museum of Huntingdonshire.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
And as ever, good networkers, we're meeting friends as we're going along. So you can see it's a lovely classical style building. Now the interesting thing about this, we're walking down a narrow road, but all the houses going off to one side or the other are actually built along the old ploughed furrows from the medieval period. So they're quite long constructs. So you've got small fronts, but you've got long backgrounds. So if we turn down the side, you can see everything is going off
I'll tell you what,
into an angle.
Just give Chris some technical support here.
Go on then.
So you've got the bottom of the screen has come up. So we're teaching Chris how to be a Periscope producer. So what we do is bring that down. So you get the full screen. That's the full screen that you're
fantastic.
seeing. And then you see the comments coming up at the bottom left-hand corner.
All right, okay.
So over to you again, Chris.
Okay, thank you. So, anyway, here we go. So you can see the distant spire in the distance, very obviously, but that was the original church. And I think it was actually called the Village of Sleep. I'm not too sure. I'd have to look it up again.
Get sleeps, right?
Yeah, but St Ives moved a bit further to the east to this centre when the bones of what is probably thought to be an old Roman resident were found, but were ascribed to the Saint Ivo, making St Ives an actual pilgrimage place. So a large market got established. Lots of trade went on here, and because we're by the river, it's also quite accessible and by the sea.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just getting a bit breathless. That's all.
Just talking and walking.
So talking and walking is quite difficult. So again, another example of the houses going off to the side. And so even with some of the large houses on the opposite side, they tend to be multiples then of the long furrows. I'll hand back over to Richard.
Okay. I know people are making comments. We've got some bright sunshine here today. It's quite difficult to see the comments, but what I'll do is I'll try and catch up with you afterwards. I hope you're enjoying this. We're doing a walk through St Ives. I'm going with a networking buddy of mine, Chris Thomas, down to the Norris Museum. So Chris is a volunteer at the Norris Museum in St Ives, and we'll take you down there and we'll introduce you to the people in the museum. Introduce you to the museum, in fact, because if you don't know it's there, you probably don't know the sort of some of the fantastic stuff and the fantastic work that they do. Because St Ives and this part of Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire has got a history stretching back right to the into the dim and distant past.
Yes, mammoths roamed around here until about 10,000 years ago.
And Chris recently curated is the word, Chris? A small exhibition at the museum on mammoths. Because as he was rootling around on a Friday morning just like this, he found an envelope full of mammoth hair. And Chris got his microscope out, had a look at it, checked it was mammoth hair, and then put together a whole exhibition about mammoths and how they're linked to this part of the world.
Okay, just got to negotiate this stretch.
The problem with doing these street views is that you can very often walk into lampposts. And so this is the Norris Museum in St Ives, and we're going in with Chris out of the sunshine for a bit, and then we come to the
where's my mammoth book? I want my mammoth book. I'm still waiting for the signed copy. I'm still waiting for the society to give you the information. Which do you want?
So this is the Norris Museum, and it's actually down by the river. Let me just show you quickly. I'm not sure whether we can get down to the river this way, but at least it'll give you a feel. So St Ives is on the water, so you can actually see that's the river that runs through the centre of the town, and just immediately behind the museum, as you can see. So let's go and see whether we can have a look inside the museum.
Right.
Are you in for the barbie tonight?
No, I can't make it to the barbie tonight. But, anyway, welcome. Are you on the front camera or the back
On the
camera?
front camera.
On the front camera?
So here we go.
Into the museum.
So this is where everything happens in St Ives on a Friday morning.
Morning, Richard. Morning. I've got my colleague Richard Wishart popping by.
Oh, I've never seen him before. Hello, how are you?
Hi, you're on Periscope.
Am I? Well,
Yes,
what's that mean?
Richard.
Am I on the submarine all of a sudden?
They've been broadcast to the world.
Oh, right, where's that?
Sorry? Sorry, it's a bit of a shock for people. This is Richard. Richard is also a helper like Chris at the Norris Museum. But you're doing walks as well, aren't you, Richard?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm actually a museum assistant. They actually pay me to do this job,
Oh,
which is
okay.
the best job in the world.
Okay.
And we do town tours and various other tours. In fact, I'm just sorting out a tour that's happening tomorrow. It's our boat, town tour and cream tea combined.
Excellent.
Tour, and I'm just selling a ticket to this lady here. So.
Well, you've just broadcast that to the world, so you might get some international orders coming in.
Right, well, hopefully the world will come along.
So how much is
£15.
Virtual tour of the
Yes, if you could, Chris.
museum.
Yeah, let's have a quick look around.
Let me find some change for you.
So here's Nessie.
Nessie.
Plesiosaur, so the bones of a plesiosaur have been found in this area because the underlying rock is late Jurassic, if I remember right.
Okay.
And this area was underwater,
Okay, cool.
so finding more of the marine organisms, giant ammonites.
And what's the big sort of snail type or the big shell?
That's an ammonite, and so they were quite a dominant species for a long time until they suddenly died out. But they were basically like little octopuses, but within the shell. There's a nautilus that exists that looks very similar to that.
Okay.
And here we're
And
looking at
this is mammoths?
yeah, these are remains of mammoths dug up from gravel pits around here. So their bones would have been washed down into the sand and the gravel, and they've been recovered from there. And it's this insignificant little mammoth hair.
Oh, this is your famous mammoth hair.
Yes, which is linked to a very famous mammoth, the very first intact mammoth found in Siberia back in 1901, 1902.
So you helped the museum curate a whole exhibition around mammoths, didn't
Well,
you?
the important thing is museums cannot run now without volunteers. So this is another fascinating aspect. If you're looking here at some of the hand axes, and the thing you have to realise, I didn't know until I was doing the mammoth exhibition and researching for it, that these axes have probably been made not by modern humans, such as we are, but a species of human like Homo heidelbergensis or the Neanderthals, from anywhere between 300,000 years ago to about 40,000 years ago. And this could be from a species of human that doesn't exist anymore. Wow. And the interest, if you're looking here, these are more modern axes, Stone Age axes, and you can see how they're nicely polished on the surface. And in fact, that was to prevent the cutting edge chipping. Although it's not known whether they were actually used, or whether they were for ceremonial purposes. So, but it's quite a small museum, and it has a very Victorian feel. So it's actually going to be going through a renovation at the moment. But meet Oliver Cromwell. This is a lovely statue done by the children of one of the schools here. Total collage out of newspapers on the wire frame. So the picture is of Oliver Cromwell by Wheatfield Primary School. And the important thing about museums is that they are actually places where not only traditions are kept alive, but people can come and do research. So here's lace making as it used to be done in the area. And also these are works done, I believe, by French prisoners of war during the Napoleonic Wars. So some fantastic skills. Oh, this is always one that intrigues me, is if you're looking at old armour, you can always see the dent, and that's where they're tested, where a musket ball would have been shot at the armour to make sure that it didn't actually penetrate. So that's testing at the time.
As long as there's nobody behind
Yeah,
it.
that's right. So this is the Roman God Manchester, which is a place just a bit further north from here, which we know, which is one of the oldest towns in existence. God Manchester, the plan. It's further along the river.
And you've got Mervyn on the call.
Have I?
Yeah, so Mervyn's just joined the call. Hi, Mervyn.
Good for you, Mervyn. So glad someone's paying attention. And I think we might have a skull from a Romano-British individual at the time. Now, when I set up my Mammoth exhibition, I set it up in this room, but this time we're actually celebrating some of the fantastic art from one of the local schools. I just have to hold the light. So we'll do a bit of an art tour, I think, because this is really good stuff. I think it's the lights. The problem is not this light; it's the light from the top of the wall. What is it? You've got a whole range here. Fantastic skills. Just trying to see what age group these are. GCSE. So that's 15, 16-year-olds, isn't it? Yeah. Gorgeous. Look at that. Could grace any wall. In fact, I'm a member of Cambridge Open Studios, and I'm exhibiting this year. We open up in July. For every 4 years, about 200 artists within Cambridge, scattered throughout Cambridgeshire. And this work, the children should be proud of this. There are some really great artists there. Yeah, who wouldn't love that dog? Now, if you want to know what I feel like sometimes in the morning, there's a good example. And for those of you feeling thirsty? No, that's not a very easy subject either. That's very good. That's excellent. And Van Gogh has been reborn.
I'm not saying a word.
Must be someone outside the museum door. So. Oh, look at the fabrics. The detail. gorgeous.
So you've got 12 people live on the call.
Yeah.
But actually, the number will be larger than that. You've got to keep telling them what we're doing.
Well, as I say, we're looking through the current exhibition at the Norris Museum. We're at the Norris Museum in St Ives, Huntingdonshire, in the United Kingdom. And this is an exhibition of artwork by one of the local schools. So these are students who are 15 or 16-year-olds, but are fantastic artists in their own right.
And Chris is a newbie scoper. This is his first scope that he's
Yeah.
done. He's done a lot of videography and lots of photographs. But this is the first actual use on this product. So you're now a qualified broadcaster, Chris.
Thank you very much. And, if you were hoping to get this device back, by the end of the day, think again. Wow, look at that detailed work.
Okay.
So these students are fantastic. Really excellent. Well, there you go.
Okay, cool. So let me just
You take over, Richard.
take over. And what I'll do is I'll just bring you back to. Hi, Mervyn. Sorry, we haven't been able to follow the what do you call it?
The conversation.
The conversation very well. So I do apologise for that. So here we are in the Norris Museum. This is myself, Richard Wishart. I'm an enterprise architect, but I've been networking. And this is Dr. Chris Thomas. So Chris is what would you call yourself, a helper for the...
A volunteer.
A volunteer.
At the Norris Museum.
And how many volunteers are there?
That's a good question. There must be quite a number because the people that come in every day. We'd have to ask Richard, the other Richard, about it. So we'll go back to reception.
So
Running through. Yeah, if you're in St Ives, definitely come to the Norris Museum.
Ask for Chris or Richard.
Yeah, it's going to be refurbished. So when's that going to start, Richard? When are we
The
going to
museum will close at the end of the year,
Right.
and then the museum will then be emptied and the refurbishment will start shortly after that.
All right. Can you tell us how many volunteers you've actually got in the museum?
Well, at the moment, the lights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We've got 15 at the moment that come in regularly.
Brilliant.
And they come in on different days, and the idea is they each have their own project. Whilst working on that project, they obviously assist us because if we didn't have volunteers coming in, we simply couldn't manage all the projects.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing the maps at the moment.
Yeah.
Rodney is in at the moment doing the coins, and Chris is doing part of the Inskip Lads files and the Mary Carter files as well.
So it is a truism that the museums couldn't actually function without the volunteers.
Oh no, good grief, no. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that we've got. How do we get to the front camera? Okay. So let's use the control on that one.
I don't know, these newbie broadcasters.
So there's some stairs going up into an attic, and basically what happens is that within that attic you've actually got samples that are...
Yes, we have. That's part of our collection up there. You only ever see a very small part of what's on show.
That's brilliant. We'll wander through.
Hello.
And my good friend and fellow researcher, Rodney. Actually, don't need the light for you. You got that's this is using a technique called Periscope, and where you can actually do a running video and it's broadcast sort of live. So it's Richard.
So
It's
this
interesting to me.
We've probably got about, how many people have we got on?
We've got 13
We've got
people.
13 live at the moment. We've probably got about 100 people from around the world listening to this.
Yeah, we're supposed to. Mervyn's telling us speak to Richard about the history walks. Yeah, we mentioned those earlier.
Yes,
Mervyn,
we-
so
yes,
thank
we-
you.
So later on today, I'll be putting this up on YouTube as well. I'll be going out in all sorts of forms of social media. So we're trying to promote the library or the museum a bit because that's important.
That's good. But one of the fantastic things that Rodney and I often end up in conversation about the fantastic coins you're looking at. But at the moment, you're looking at something called jetons.
Yes.
So can you tell me about those again?
A jeton is a continental, well, a lot of the jetons were made on the continent, particularly in Nuremberg in about the 16th, 17th centuries, and they were used as counters for kind of accounting using a checkerboard, hence the expression the exchequer.
All right.
So it was a kind of glorified abacus, and these are sort of small, bronzy, brassy coins, counters, and
Chef, what at hand at the moment?
and I've been recording them, and I'm just picking one entirely out at random. Oh, the one I picked out actually is the most common type.
Mm-hmm. What's it look like?
And we'll get it out of the packet. And actually, that's a very nice one.
Oh, let's see whether I can get close enough with the. This is brilliant camera, Richard. Look at that.
So that is the most common jeton from Nuremberg. I'll turn it over. It's called a rose orb type. So here we've got the orb in the centre.
Yeah.
And on the other side, there is actually, if you look carefully, there is a rose in the centre of the design. A little rose, stylised rose.
Oh, brilliant. And they didn't have any physical value. We don't, as far as we think. They were just used for calculation, really.
For counters, and later they were believed they were also used as gaming counters.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Oh yes, later when they went out of use. So if you're doing poker or whatever,
Something like that.
they would have been used those.
So that's a good story for the pub quiz tonight. The exchequer. I've never come across that term before.
Yes, that's right.
That's really good. Okay,
That's good.
so probably shall we pull to close?
Well, I'm just wondering, Chris, did you want to say anything about your landscape work? Yeah. Yes. What are you doing, Chris? Are you happy to tell us a bit about what you're doing? Chris's work is so confidential that we're not allowed to talk about.
Okay, well, I'd just like to say thank you, Chris, for giving an insight as to what you do.
It's been
here.
good fun.
And as a newbie broadcaster, hope we can get you onto this soon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Let's just